I never imagined that what started as the most painful week of my marriage would end up being the most beautiful proof of love I could ever receive. My name is Thessaly Windermere, and this is the story of how I almost destroyed everything because I let fear cloud my judgment. It was a Thursday evening in late October when I first noticed the change in my husband Caspian. We had been married for 7 years, and in all that time, I had never seen him behave the way he suddenly started to. He became distant, secretive, always glancing at his phone with a strange expression I could not quite read. He would leave the room to take calls, speaking in hushed tones that made my stomach twist into knots. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, that I was being paranoid, but with each passing day, the evidence seemed to mount against him. The signs were everywhere once I started looking for them. The way he would quickly close his laptop when I walked into the room. The way he started password protecting his phone when he had never done that before in our entire relationship. The way he would come home smelling faintly of perfume that was not mine, a scent I did not recognize, something floral and expensive. The way he stopped initiating intimacy, stopped reaching for me in bed at night, stopped looking at me with that particular warmth that had always been just for me. I felt like I was losing my mind, constantly analyzing every word and gesture, looking for proof of what I was increasingly certain was happening. Caspian and I met when I was 23 and he was 25. I was working as a freelance graphic designer, struggling to make ends meet in a tiny studio apartment in Portland, and he was a project manager at a tech startup that was just beginning to find its footing. We met at a coffee shop called The Daily Grind, a little hole-in-the-wall place near Powell's Books that I frequented, because they had the best Wi-Fi, and the barista never judged me for nursing a single coffee for 4 hours while I worked. It was a rainy Tuesday morning in March, the kind of rain that Portland is famous for. That steady drizzle that soaks you to the bone without seeming dramatic enough to warrant an umbrella. I was hunched over my laptop at my favorite corner table, working on a logo design for a yoga studio. My third cup of coffee beside me and my sketchbook, opened 2 pages covered in rough drafts and crossed out ideas. I was so focused on what I was doing that I did not even notice him approaching until suddenly there was a crash and a splash and my entire table was covered in hot coffee. For a moment, I just stared in disbelief as the brown liquid spread across my sketchbook, soaking into weeks of work, bleeding the ink and watercolors into an indistinct muddy mess. Then I looked up, ready to unleash my fury on whoever had been clumsy enough to ruin my morning. And I found myself looking into the most beautiful storm gray eyes I had ever seen. They were wide with horror and genuine distress, and the man attached to them was already grabbing napkins from the dispenser on the wall, trying desperately to contain the damage. "I am so sorry," he kept saying, over and over, his voice tight with panic. "I am so incredibly sorry. I was not looking where I was going and I am sorry. Please let me pay for whatever I ruined. Please let me replace your coffee. Please let me do something." There was something about the raw sincerity in his voice, the genuine remorse on his face, that deflated my anger before it could fully form. It was clearly an accident, and he was obviously mortified. I found myself saying it was okay, even as I tried to salvage what I could from my sketchbook, carefully peeling apart pages that had stuck together, assessing the damage. Most of it was ruined, months of work and ideas, but I could not bring myself to make him feel worse than he already clearly did. He insisted on buying me a new coffee and a new sketchbook, and somehow, in the process of walking to the art supply store down the street, we started talking. Really talking. He told me his name was Caspian Thorne, and that his parents had been literature professors who loved obscure references and had saddled him with a name from Narnia. That he had spent his childhood being teased about. I told him my name was Thessaly Windermere, and that my mother had been obsessed with Greek mythology and romantic poetry, which explained my equally unusual name. We bonded over the burden of distinctive names, and then over coffee preferences. And then over our shared love of old movies and good books, and the particular magic of Portland in the rain. By the time we made it back to the coffee shop, my new sketchbook tucked under my arm, 2 hours had passed, and I had completely forgotten about the work I was supposed to be doing. He asked if he could see me again, maybe for dinner that weekend, and I found myself saying yes before I had even consciously decided to. There was something about him that felt safe and exciting all at once, familiar and new, like coming home to a place you had never been before. Our first date was at a little Italian restaurant in the Pearl District. A cozy place with checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles and the best carbonara I had ever tasted. We talked for 4 hours, long after we had finished eating, until the waiter started pointedly cleaning tables around us and we realized we were the last customers left. Caspian told me about his childhood in a small town in Vermont called Millbrook. Raised by a single mother named Vivian who worked 3 jobs to keep him and his younger sister Dorianne fed and clothed and in decent schools. His father had left when he was 6, just walked out one day and never came back. And Caspian had spent his whole childhood being the man of the house, helping his mother however he could, taking care of his sister, learning early that love meant showing up and doing the work even when it was hard. I told him about my own fractured family, about parents who had seemed happy until I was 8 and then suddenly were not, about a divorce that had been bitter and prolonged, about being used as a weapon in their endless war against each other. My mother telling me that my father did not really love us, that he cared more about his career than his family. My father telling me that my mother was unstable and manipulative, that she had always been difficult. Both of them expecting me to choose sides, to validate their anger, to serve as witness to the other's failures. I told him how I had learned not to trust love, not to believe in happily ever after, because I had seen firsthand how quickly forever could become never. And yet here I was, on a date with a stranger, feeling more seen and understood than I had felt in years. 6 months later, we moved in together. It was fast, maybe too fast, but it felt right. We found a little 1-bedroom apartment in Southeast Portland, nothing fancy, but it was ours. Caspian's mother sent us a housewarming gift, a beautiful quilt she had made herself in shades of blue and cream, and we spread it on our bed and christened our new home properly. We fell into an easy rhythm, learning each other's habits and quirks, figuring out how to share space and compromise on everything from what temperature to keep the apartment, to whose turn it was to do the dishes. A year after that, on a rainy November evening, Caspian proposed. We were walking across the Burnside Bridge, our usual route home from dinner in the Pearl, and the rain was coming down hard. We were both soaked, laughing about something silly, and then suddenly he stopped in the middle of the bridge and turned to face me. His hair was plastered to his forehead and water was dripping down his face, and he looked ridiculous and beautiful all at once. "Thessaly," he said, and his voice was shaking slightly, from cold or nerves I could not tell. "I know we have not been together that long. I know there is so much we still have to figure out, but I also know that I have never been more certain of anything in my life than I am of you. You are my home. You are my person. You are the one I want to build a life with. Will you marry me?" He pulled a ring box from his jacket pocket, and when he opened it, I saw a simple silver band with a small blue stone, nothing extravagant but perfectly us. I started crying, tears mixing with rain, and I threw my arms around him and said yes. Yes to all of it, to the uncertainty and the risk, and the leap of faith that marriage required. Yes to choosing this man, this love, this life we would build together. Our wedding was 6 months later, in May, a small ceremony in a garden near Mount Tabor, with maybe 30 people in attendance. Caspian's mother and sister came, Vivian crying through the entire ceremony and Dorianne serving as my maid of honor, even though we had only known each other a short time. My father attended, bringing his new girlfriend, a woman closer to my age than his. My mother did not come. She had made it clear that she thought I was making a mistake, that I was too young, that Caspian was not good enough, that I would end up just like her, divorced and bitter and alone. Her absence hurt less than I expected it to, or maybe I had just gotten good at numbing myself to her particular brand of toxicity. What mattered was that Caspian and I stood in that garden and made promises to each other in front of the people who actually loved us and wanted us to succeed. We promised to love and honor each other, to choose each other every day, to build something lasting and real. The first few years of our marriage were good. Not perfect, because nothing ever is, but good. We had our share of struggles. Money was tight sometimes, especially when I was between contracts or when Caspian's startup hit rough patches. We fought about stupid things like whose family to visit for holidays, and whether to get a cat, and how to load the dishwasher properly. We had to learn how to communicate effectively, how to fight fair, how to apologize and forgive and move forward. But underneath all the normal challenges of building a life together, there was a foundation of love and respect and genuine partnership that made everything feel manageable. We were a team. We were in it together. Or at least, that was what I had always believed, until that Thursday evening in October of our 7th year, when I started to notice the changes in Caspian. It began so subtly that at first I thought I was imagining it. He started working late, more often, coming home at 8 or 9 instead of his usual 6. He was distracted when he was home, his mind clearly somewhere else, even when we were sitting together on the couch watching television. He stopped asking me about my day with the same genuine interest he always had. He stopped sharing details about his own work, giving me vague non-answers when I asked how things were going at the office. And then there were the phone calls. He would get a call, and his whole body would tense. He would glance at me, and then at the screen, and then excuse himself to another room, closing the door behind him. I could hear his voice through the walls, low and urgent, but I could never make out the words. When he came back, he would act like nothing had happened, changing the subject if I asked who had called, telling me it was just work stuff, nothing important, nothing I needed to worry about. But I was worrying. How could I not worry when my husband was suddenly behaving like a stranger? The real breaking point came exactly 1 week into this new pattern. It was a Thursday evening again, as if the universe had a sense of cruel irony, and I was making dinner when his phone lit up on the kitchen counter. He was in the shower, and I was chopping vegetables for a stir-fry, and the notification popped up on his screen, a text message from someone named Marceline. The preview showed just a fragment. "Cannot wait to see you tomorrow. Do not forget what we discussed. Bring the samples." My heart stopped. My hands stopped. Everything stopped for one long, horrible moment, while my brain tried to process what I had just read. Who was Marceline? What were they discussing? What samples? And why had I never heard my husband mention anyone by that name? I stood there, frozen, the knife still in my hand, staring at that phone like it was a bomb about to explode. Part of me wanted to grab it, to unlock it, to read through every message and call log until I found the truth. But another part of me was terrified of what I might find. Because once you know something, you cannot unknow it. Once you cross that line, there is no going back to innocent ignorance. I heard the shower turn off and quickly looked away from the phone, returning to my vegetables with hands that shook so badly I nearly cut myself. When Caspian emerged a few minutes later, hair damp and dressed in sweats and a t-shirt, he looked so normal, so much like the man I had been married to for 7 years, that for a moment I thought maybe I had imagined the whole thing. Maybe there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe Marceline was a coworker and the samples were work-related and I was being paranoid and insecure for no reason. But then he picked up his phone, glanced at the screen, and his expression changed. It was just for a second. Just a flash of something. Guilt or worry or secrecy. Before his face smoothed into a neutral smile, he shoved the phone in his pocket and came over to kiss my cheek, asking what we were having for dinner. I forced myself to respond normally, to act like I had not seen anything, to pretend that my entire world had not just tilted on its axis. We ate dinner and watched a movie and went to bed. And the whole time I felt like I was performing the role of wife in a play I no longer understood. That night, after Caspian fell asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling and thinking about my parents, about my mother's suspicions and my father's lies, about the way their marriage had corroded from the inside out. eaten away by infidelity and resentment, until there was nothing left but anger. I had sworn I would never end up like them. I had sworn that if I ever got married, it would be different, better, built on a foundation of trust and honesty that could withstand anything. And yet here I was, lying next to my sleeping husband, wondering if he was having an affair, wondering if I even really knew him at all. Over the next few days, I found myself doing things I had never thought I would do, things I had always judged other people for doing. I started watching him more carefully, noting patterns in his behavior. He got that same tense look whenever his phone rang or buzzed with a notification. He started password protecting his phone, something he had never done before. I knew because I tried to check it one morning when he was in the shower, and it asked for a 6-digit code I did not know. The level of betrayal I felt in that moment was staggering. We had always had full access to each other's devices. It had never been an issue because we had nothing to hide. Or so I had thought. When he came out of the bathroom, I asked him casually if he had changed his phone password. He looked surprised, almost guilty, and then shrugged and said, "Yeah." His company had implemented new security protocols and everyone had to add passcodes to their devices. It sounded plausible. It even made sense. But something about the way he would not quite meet my eyes when he said it made me doubt every word. I started checking his coat pockets when he was not looking, searching for I did not even know what. Evidence, proof, something concrete to confirm what my gut was screaming at me. I found receipts from restaurants I had never been to, places downtown that were nice. The kind of places you went for a romantic dinner, not a business lunch. I found a receipt from a jewelry store, a significant amount spent on something he had never given me. My mind raced with possibilities, each one worse than the last. Was he buying jewelry for another woman? Was he planning to leave me? How long had this been going on? I searched his car one afternoon when he was working from home, going through the glove compartment and under the seats, feeling like a crazy person but unable to stop myself. I found nothing except some old maps and a parking stub from downtown 2 weeks ago on a day he had told me he was working from home. Another lie. Another piece of evidence in the case I was building against him in my head. I checked his credit card statements, something I had online access to since we shared finances. More restaurant charges. More unexplained expenses. A charge from something called Riversong Estate that I did not recognize. I Googled it and found it was an event venue, a beautiful old mansion used for weddings and parties and corporate events. Why would Caspian have charged something there? What event was he planning, or attending? My imagination supplied endless scenarios, each one more painful than the last. The worst moment came on a Tuesday evening, exactly 1 week before our 7th anniversary. I had been dreading our anniversary, honestly, because how were we supposed to celebrate 7 years of marriage, when I was not even sure we would make it to 8? Caspian came home from work and told me he had to go back to the office, that there was a crisis with a major project, and he would probably be there until past midnight. He looked stressed and apologetic, and part of me wanted to believe him, wanted to take his words at face value the way I always had before. But I could not anymore. After he left, I sat alone in our living room for maybe 20 minutes, anxiety churning in my gut, and then I made a decision. I grabbed my keys and my phone and I drove to his office. It was a 30-minute drive through evening traffic, and the whole way there my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. What was I going to do when I got there? Burst in and confront him? Follow him if he left? Catch him in the act of whatever betrayal he was committing? I did not have a plan, just a desperate, sick need to know the truth. When I arrived at his office building, a modern glass structure in the Pearl District, I parked across the street and scanned the parking lot. His car was not there. I sat there for a moment, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, and then I called his office line. Voicemail. I called his cell phone. It rang twice, and then went to voicemail, like he had actively declined the call. He was not at work. He had lied to me. My husband had looked me in the eye and lied to me about where he was going and what he was doing. and I could not think of a single innocent reason why he would do that. I drove home in a daze, tears streaming down my face, having to pull over twice because I was crying too hard to see the road. By the time I got home, I had convinced myself that my marriage was over, that Caspian was having an affair with this Marceline person, whoever she was, that he was probably with her right now, in some hotel room or her apartment, making the same promises to her that he had once made to me. That our 7 years together meant nothing, that I meant nothing, that I had been a fool to ever believe in love or marriage, or happily ever after. When I walked into our bedroom, I was not thinking clearly. I was operating on pure emotion, hurt and anger and betrayal all mixed together into a toxic cocktail that demanded action. I started going through his things, pulling open dresser drawers, searching the closet, looking for concrete proof of the affair I was now certain he was having. I needed evidence. I needed to know for sure, so that when I confronted him, when I ended this marriage, I would have something to point to other than my own suspicions and fears. I went through 2 drawers before I found it. Hidden beneath a stack of his sweaters, carefully wrapped in tissue paper, was a small velvet box. My hands were shaking as I picked it up. This was it. This was the proof I needed. He had bought jewelry for someone else. He was probably planning to give it to her after he left me. I opened the box, my heart in my throat, expecting to see something that would shatter whatever remained of my heart. Instead, what I saw made me freeze. Inside the box was a silver bracelet, delicate and beautiful, with tiny charms hanging from it. I lifted it out with trembling fingers, turning it in the light to see each charm more clearly. A tiny paintbrush, a coffee cup, a bridge, a book, a ring, a house. Each one was a symbol of our relationship, our history, our life together. The paintbrush for my art, the coffee cup for how we met, the bridge for where he proposed, the book for our shared love of reading, the ring for our wedding, the house for the home we had built together. This was not a gift for another woman. This was a gift for me. Tucked beneath the bracelet was a folded piece of paper. I pulled it out with hands that could barely hold it steady and unfolded it to reveal Caspian's familiar handwriting, that messy scrawl I knew as well as my own. At the top of the page, underlined twice, were the words, "Anniversary Surprise Plan." Below that was a list, "Contact Marceline Devereaux, Event Coordinator, to discuss venue and catering. Get guest lists finalized. Call Mom and Dorianne to confirm travel plans. Book Riversong Estate for party. Deposit due by the 15th. Choose menu. Remember, Thessaly loves salmon and chocolate cake. Commission video montage from our photos. Ask Dorianne to help collect pictures I do not have access to. Pick up custom bracelet from Silversmith and Stone on 23rd. Write speech. Practice speech. Try not to ruin surprise. Make sure she knows how much she is loved." I sat down hard on the floor, still clutching the paper and the bracelet, and I started to cry. Not the angry tears I had been crying in the car, but great heaving sobs of relief and shame and overwhelming emotion. He was not having an affair. He was planning a surprise party for our anniversary. Marceline was not his mistress but an event coordinator. The late nights and secret phone calls were not about betraying me but about celebrating us. The receipts from nice restaurants were probably tastings for the party menu. The charge from Riversong Estate was for our venue. The mysterious samples Marceline had mentioned were probably catering samples or floral arrangements or some other party detail. And I had convinced myself he was cheating on me. I had spied on him and doubted him and driven to his office to catch him in a lie that was actually just him. Working hard to do something wonderful for me. I felt like the worst person in the world. I carefully put the bracelet back in its box, refolded the paper exactly as I had found it, and placed everything back under the sweaters in the exact same spot. Then I went to the bathroom and washed my face, staring at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red and swollen, my face blotchy from crying. I looked like someone who had just been through a trauma, which I supposed I had. A trauma of my own making, born from my inability to trust, from the damage my parents had done that I clearly had not healed from as much as I thought. I understood in that moment something crucial about myself. I had been so afraid of becoming my mother, so afraid of being the betrayed wife who refused to see the truth, that I had turned into her anyway, just in a different way. I had let her voice in my head, her constant warnings that all men cheat, that love always ends in betrayal, that I should never fully trust anyone, poison my perception of my own husband. I had let my father's actions, his lies and infidelity, color how I saw every man, including the one who had never given me any reason to doubt him, until I went looking for reasons. I had damaged the foundation of my marriage not because Caspian had done anything wrong, but because I could not stop myself from expecting him to. That realization broke something open inside me, something that needed to break so it could heal properly. I needed to deal with the damage my childhood had done. I needed to stop letting my parents' failed marriage dictate the terms of my own. I needed to trust Caspian, really trust him, not just in words, but in my heart and my gut and my actions. When Caspian came home around 1 a.m, I was on the couch with a book in my lap, trying to look casual and normal, even though I felt anything but. He looked exhausted, his tie loosened and his hair mussed, his jacket slung over one arm. When he saw me still awake, his face softened into something like relief. "Hey," he said quietly, coming to sit beside me. "You did not have to wait up." "I could not sleep," I said, which was true. I do not think I could have slept if I had tried. "How was your evening?" "It was fine," he said, and I could see him struggling with the lie, see the discomfort in the way he would not quite meet my eyes. "Just long, boring work stuff. I am sorry I was gone so late." I reached out and took his hand, squeezing it gently. "It is okay," I said. "I trust you." The words felt like both a promise and a plea. A promise that I would do better, that I would stop doubting him, a plea that he would be patient with me while I figured out how. He looked at me for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression, and then he pulled me close and kissed the top of my head. "I love you," he murmured into my hair. "More than you know." "I love you too," I whispered back, and I meant it with everything I had. The next few days were strange. I went about my life knowing what I knew, watching Caspian continue his secret planning, having to pretend I was still in the dark. It was harder than I expected. Every time he took a secret phone call, I had to fight the urge to tell him I knew, that he did not have to hide anymore. Every time he came home late with some vague excuse, I had to bite my tongue to keep from spilling the truth. But I also understood that this surprise meant something to him. He had put so much time and thought and effort into planning something special for me. He wanted to see my face when I walked into that party, wanted to give me that moment of genuine surprise and joy. Who was I to take that away from him? Especially after I had already violated his trust by going through his things. So I played along. I asked what he wanted to do for our anniversary when it came up in conversation, and I suggested maybe just a quiet dinner at home. I watched his eyes light up with barely contained excitement when he said, "What if we did something a little more special? Maybe had some friends over?" I agreed icily, hiding my smile at how pleased he looked with himself for manipulating me into agreeing to my own surprise party. But I also decided that I could not just show up to this party he had worked so hard on without doing something of my own. I needed to show him that I appreciated what he was doing, that I recognized the love and effort he was putting in. More than that, I needed to create something that expressed everything I was feeling. All the love and gratitude and remorse and hope that I could not quite put into words. So on Sunday, 3 days before our anniversary, while Caspian was supposedly at the gym but was probably actually doing a final walkthrough of the venue, I went to my studio. It was a small room we had converted from what was supposed to be a dining room, with good natural light and space for my easel and supplies. I had not painted anything truly personal in months, too caught up in client work and deadlines to make art just for myself. But suddenly I was filled with an urgent need to create something meaningful. Something that would show Caspian who we were, what we had built, how much he meant to me. I set up my largest canvas, a 4-foot by 3-foot rectangle that I usually reserved for major commission pieces, and I started to paint. At first, I was not even sure what I was creating. I just let my brush move, following instinct rather than plan, letting color and shape emerge organically. Slowly, an image began to form. 2 figures, abstract and intertwined, rendered in shades of blue and silver and white. The figures were not realistic representations but something more emotional, more symbolic. They flowed into each other, separate but connected, individual but united. The blue was everywhere, in dozens of different shades. Azure and cobalt and navy and cyan and cerulean and teal. Blue had always been our color somehow. The blue of my eyes that Caspian said he fell in love with the first time he saw me. The blue of the couch we had bought together after visiting 7 different furniture stores. The blue of the bridge where he proposed in the rain. The blue of the ocean on our honeymoon. The blue of a bruise, of something tender that hurts when you touch it but is healing underneath. The silver was, for Caspian, for the strength and steadiness he brought to my chaotic creative life, for the way he had always been my anchor, my safe harbor. Silver like moonlight on water. Silver like the ring he gave me on the bridge. Silver like the threads running through everything we had built together, holding it all in place. I painted for hours, completely lost in the work. My phone buzzed several times, probably Caspian checking in, but I ignored it. This was important. This felt like the most important thing I had ever created, not because it was technically perfect, though I was proud of the skill level, but because it was true. It captured something essential about us, about the way we fit together, about what we meant to each other. When I finally stepped back to look at the finished piece, the sun was setting and my studio was filled with golden light. The painting seemed to glow. The 2 figures were so clearly in love, so clearly meant for each other, that it made my heart ache. This was us. This was our love made visible. This was what I needed him to see, to understand, to know. That despite my fears and doubts, despite my failure to trust him the way he deserved, despite everything broken in me that I was still trying to heal, I loved him completely. I loved him enough to paint our story in colors that would never fully fade. I loved him enough to keep choosing him every single day. I loved him enough to fight through my damage and trust in what we had built together. I heard the front door open and close, heard Caspian call out asking if I was home. I quickly covered the canvas with a sheet, not wanting him to see it yet, and went to greet him. He was sweaty from his supposed workout, dressed in gym clothes that supported the lie, and when I hugged him I could smell the salt and musk of exercise. Or maybe he really had been to the gym after his venue walkthrough. Maybe he was working that hard to maintain the illusion, going 2 extra lengths to make sure I did not suspect anything. The thought made me love him even more. We made dinner together that night, moving around our small kitchen with the easy choreography of 7 years of practice. He chopped vegetables while I cooked pasta. And we talked about our days in the surface-level way we had perfected over the past few weeks. But underneath the casual conversation, I could feel the current of everything unspoken. His excitement about the party he was planning. My knowledge of the party he did not know I knew about. The love between us that we were both trying to express in our own ways. After dinner, we settled on the couch to watch a movie, one of our favorite old films we had seen dozens of times. Halfway through, Caspian turned to me with a serious expression. "I need to tell you something," he said, and my heart stopped for a second before he continued. "I know things have been weird lately. I know I have been distracted and distant, and not fully present. And I just want you to know that it is not because of anything wrong between us. It is just work stuff, some complicated projects I am dealing with, but I realized that I have not been making enough time for us, for our relationship, and I want to change that. After this week, after our anniversary, I promise things will be different. I promise I will be better." I felt tears prick my eyes because he had no idea how much those words meant to me, how much I needed to hear that reassurance even though I knew the truth of what he was doing. "It is okay," I said softly. "I understand. And I trust you, Caspian. I really do. He pulled me closer, wrapping his arms around me, and we stayed like that through the rest of the movie, tangled together on our blue couch. I thought about how close I had come to losing this. If I had confronted him with my suspicions before finding that anniversary plan, we would have had a terrible fight. He would have been hurt that I did not trust him. I would have been embarrassed by my accusations. The surprise would have been ruined, but more than that, the foundation of our marriage would have been damaged in ways that might have taken years to repair. Instead, I had this. This quiet evening on the couch, this man who loved me enough to spend weeks secretly planning a party to celebrate our life together. This relationship that was stronger than my fears. I had almost destroyed it all because I could not get out of my own way. Could not silence the voices from my past that told me love always ended in betrayal. But I had been given a second chance, an opportunity to choose trust over fear, and I was not going to waste it. On Monday, the day before our anniversary, I got an unexpected phone call. I was in my studio, putting the finishing touches on the painting, when Caspian's phone started ringing from where he had left it on the kitchen counter. He was in the shower, getting ready for work, and normally I would have just let it ring, but I saw the name on the screen, Marceline. And even though I knew who she was now, even though I knew there was nothing to worry about, I could not help myself. I answered. "Hello," I said, my voice uncertain. "Oh," a bright, friendly, professional voice responded. "Is this Thessaly?" Yes," I said, confused about how she knew. "This is Marceline Devereaux. I am the event coordinator working with your husband on the anniversary party. I just wanted to double-check a few final details with you directly if you have a moment." Caspian said it would be okay to reach out today since the party is tomorrow night, and I figured at this point the surprise was probably blown anyway. He said, "You are really good at figuring things out." Relief and amusement washed over me in equal measure, along with a surge of love for my husband, who apparently knew me well enough to anticipate that I might have discovered his secret. "You are right," I said, laughing. "I found out about the party last week completely by accident. So yes, let me know what you need to confirm." We spent the next 20 minutes on the phone, and I learned the full scope of what Caspian had been planning for the past 6 weeks. He had invited 42 people, our closest friends and family, from all over the country. His mother Vivian and sister Dorianne were flying in from Vermont the day of the party. My father was driving up from Eugene with his girlfriend, which I had mixed feelings about but appreciated that Caspian had tried to include my family, even though they were complicated. He had hired a string quartet to play during cocktail hour, and they would be performing arrangements of songs that were meaningful to us. Our first dance song from the wedding. The song that had been playing in the coffee shop the day we met. The song from the movie we watched on our first date. He had commissioned a videographer to create a montage of photos from our relationship, something he had been secretly collecting for months, apparently enlisting the help of Dorianne and various friends to gather pictures he did not have access to. Marceline told me that Caspian had spent hours going through photos, selecting just the right ones, writing captions for the video that told the story of our love. The menu was incredibly thoughtful. Every single dish had been chosen because it meant something to us. Salmon with lemon and dill, the same preparation we had ordered on our first date at that Italian restaurant. Roasted vegetables with herbs, his mother's recipe that she had taught me to make. Chocolate cake with raspberry filling, the same kind we had served at our wedding. Even the cocktails had been customized, a signature drink he had invented that was called something ridiculous like the Windermere Whirlwind, made with blue curacao to match my eyes. He had arranged for transportation for out-of-town guests, and hotel room blocks and a photographer to capture the whole evening. He had spent, I realized with a jolt, several $1,000s on this party. More than we usually spent on anything frivolous, more than was probably financially wise given that we were trying to save for a down payment on a house, but he had done it anyway because he wanted to give me something special, something memorable, something that showed me how much I meant to him. By the time I hung up with Marceline, I was crying again. These were becoming a regular occurrence. Caspian emerged from the bathroom right as I was wiping my eyes, and he took one look at me and went pale. "What happened?" he asked, moving quickly to my side. "Are you okay?" I held up his phone. "Marceline called," I said. He closed his eyes and let out a long breath. "So you know," he said. It was not a question. "I have known since last week," I admitted. "I found your notes in the dresser drawer when I was putting away laundry. I am sorry for snooping. I did not mean to ruin the surprise." Instead of looking disappointed or upset, he started laughing. Actual genuine laughter that made his whole face light up. He sat down next to me at the kitchen table and took my hands in his. "Honestly, I am kind of relieved," he said. "Keeping this secret has been one of the hardest things I have ever done. Every time you asked what I was doing or where I was going, I felt terrible lying to you. But I wanted so badly to surprise you, to do something special that would show you how much you mean to me." I squeezed his hands, feeling fresh tears threatening. "It is the most thoughtful, beautiful thing anyone has ever done for me," I said. "And I need to tell you something. I need to confess something." Over the next hour, I told him everything. I told him about seeing the text from Marceline that first night and jumping to the worst possible conclusion. I told him about all the evidence I had collected, the receipts and the charges and the changed passwords, and how I had built a case in my mind that he was having an affair. I told him about driving to his office that Tuesday night and discovering he was not there, and how convinced I was that he was with another woman. I told him about going through his dresser drawers looking for proof of his betrayal and finding instead proof of his love. I told him about my mother's voice in my head, my father's actions coloring my perceptions, all the damage from my childhood that I thought I had dealt with but clearly had not. I told him how ashamed I was, how sorry I was for doubting him, for not trusting him, for letting my fear nearly destroy what we had built together. He listened to all of it without interrupting, his hands never leaving mine, his eyes steady on my face. When I finally finished, when I had confessed everything and sat waiting for his response, he was quiet for a long moment. I was prepared for him to be angry, to be hurt, to be disappointed in me. Instead, he said something I did not expect. "I understand," he said simply. "I understand where that fear comes from, Thessaly. I know what your parents did to you. I know how hard it is for you to trust, how scary it must be to open yourself up to being hurt the way they hurt you. And I am not angry. If anything, I am angry at myself for not realizing how my secretive behavior would look to you, for not thinking about how my distance and lies, even well-intentioned ones, would trigger all your worst fears. I should have been more careful. I should have found a way to plan this surprise without making you feel insecure." I shook my head firmly. "No," I said. "You should not have to walk on eggshells around my damage. You should not have to avoid doing nice things because I might misinterpret them. This is my issue to work on, my healing to do, and I promise you I am going to do that work. I am going to talk to someone, maybe a therapist, about all this stuff with my parents, because I cannot keep letting their broken marriage poison ours." We sat there at the kitchen table, holding hands and crying a little, and we talked for hours. About trust and fear, about commitment and choice, about the difference between his parents' marriage and mine, about how we could build something different, something better, something that would last. We talked about the importance of communication, about not letting things fester, about being honest even when it was hard. We made promises to each other. I promised to trust him unless he gave me actual reason not to come to him with my fears instead of letting them spiral in my head, to work on healing the damage my parents had done so that their failures would not become my own. He promised to be more mindful of how his actions might be perceived, to check in with me more often, to make sure I felt secure and valued and prioritized even when life got busy. We promised to keep dating each other, to keep surprising each other in small ways, to never take our relationship for granted or assume it would maintain itself without effort. We promised to be intentional about our love, to choose each other actively every single day, to remember that marriage was not just a state of being but an action, a verb, something you did rather than something you had. By the time we finished talking, the sun was coming up and we were both exhausted but lighter somehow, cleaner. Like we had lanced an infection we had not fully realized was there, and could now begin to heal properly. We went to bed and slept tangled together, and when we woke up a few hours later, it was the day of our 7th anniversary. Caspian left early to help set up at Riversong Estate, kissing me goodbye and telling me that Dorian would pick me up at 6:30. I spent the day getting ready, taking my time with a long bath and doing my hair and makeup with more care than usual. I chose a dress I knew Caspian loved, a deep blue silk that brought out my eyes, and I put on the small diamond earrings he had given me for our 1st anniversary. I carefully wrapped the painting I had made, securing it with brown paper and string, and I wrote a card to go with it. In the card, I wrote about 7 years of love, about coffee spills and rainy proposals, about building a home together from nothing but hope and determination. I wrote about how he was my anchor and my adventure all at once, my safe harbor and my open sea. I wrote that I would choose him every day for the rest of my life, in the big moments and the small ones, in the easy times and the hard ones. I wrote that he was my home. At 6:15, I heard a car pull up outside, and I looked out to see Dorian climbing out of her rental. She bounded up to the door with her characteristic energy, her dark curly hair wild around her face, her smile enormous. When I opened the door, she pulled me into a tight hug. "Happy anniversary," she said. "Are you ready for your surprise party?" I started laughing. "You know that I know, right?" She pulled back and grinned. "Oh yeah, Caspian told me." He actually seemed kind of relieved about it. Apparently keeping secrets from you is harder than he expected. He said you are too perceptive. We loaded my painting into her trunk and drove through the city toward the estate. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple, and the autumn air was crisp and cool. As we got closer, I could see lights strung through the trees lining the driveway, glowing softly in the gathering dusk. Dorian glanced at me as we pulled up to the main house. "He really loves you, you know," she said, her tone more serious than usual. "I have never seen my brother as happy as he has been these past 7 years. You are good for each other, you fit." I felt tears prick my eyes for what felt like the 100th time that week. "I love him too," I said. "More than I know how to say." "Well," she said, putting the car in park, "tonight might be a good time to try." When I walked into Riversong Estate, I was overwhelmed by what I saw. The entire main hall had been transformed into something magical. Hundreds of candles covered every surface, casting flickering golden light across the room. Flowers were everywhere, gorgeous arrangements in blues and silvers and whites that must have cost a fortune. Photographs of us covered the walls, our entire history on display. Pictures from that first coffee shop meeting that I did not even know existed. Someone must have taken it without us noticing. Pictures from our early dates and our engagement and our wedding. Pictures from vacations and holidays and ordinary days that became extraordinary because we were together. Pictures that told the story of us, of how we had fallen in love and built a life and become the people we were now, and people. So many people. All our closest friends, people we had not seen in years. People who had traveled across the country to be here tonight. Caspian's mother Vivian, crying already, her hands clasped over her heart. My father looking uncomfortable but trying, his girlfriend hovering uncertainly at his side. Friends from college and work and our neighborhood. The barista from the daily grind where we met, who apparently Caspian had tracked down and invited. The jeweler who made our wedding rings. The florist from our wedding. All these people who had been part of our story in ways large and small, gathered together to celebrate us. As I stood there taking it all in, the crowd parted and I saw Caspian walking toward me. He was wearing a suit I had never seen before, something new he must have bought for tonight. A deep charcoal gray that made his eyes look like storm clouds. He was looking at me like I was the only person in the room, like I was the most precious thing he had ever seen. When he reached me, he took both my hands in his and just looked at me for a long moment, not saying anything, just looking. The room was silent, everyone watching, and I could feel the weight of their attention, but all I could see was him. Then he smiled, that slow, genuine smile that still made my heart skip after all these years, and he began to speak. 7 years ago, he said, his voice carrying across the quiet room, I married the most incredible woman I have ever known. She is brilliant and creative and kind and strong and beautiful inside and out. She challenges me to be better and supports me when I fall short. She builds things with her hands and her heart that make the world more beautiful. She chose me. Somehow, miraculously, she chose me, and every single day since then has been the greatest gift of my life. He paused, squeezing my hands, and I could see tears in his eyes. These past 7 years have not always been easy. We have faced struggles and setbacks and all the normal challenges that life throws at any couple. But through all of it, we have had each other. We have built something together that is stronger than any individual obstacle. We have created a home and a life and a love that I am so proud of. And I wanted tonight to be a celebration not just of the 7 years behind us, but of all the years ahead. A celebration of choosing each other, every single day, for the rest of our lives. Happy anniversary, Thessaly. I love you more than words can express. The room erupted in applause, but I barely heard it. I stepped closer to him, reaching up to frame his face with my hands. I have something for you too, I said. Dorian appeared at my elbow with the wrapped painting, and together we unwrapped it, revealing the canvas to the room. There was a collective gasp, and I watched Caspian's face as he took in what I had created. His eyes went wide, tracing the intertwined figures, the shades of blue and silver, the visual representation of everything we were to each other. I painted it this week, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. While Caspian was working on all this, I wanted to create something that showed how I see us, how we fit together, how we have built something beautiful together out of all our broken pieces, how I choose him too, every day, in every way. Caspian stared at the painting for a long moment, and when he looked back at me, he was openly crying. It is perfect, he whispered. You are perfect, we are perfect together. We kissed then, in front of all those people, and the room erupted in cheers and applause. Someone started playing music, the string quartet launching into our wedding song. And Caspian pulled me into a dance right there in the middle of the hall. As we swayed together, surrounded by everyone we loved, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. This was real. This love, this marriage, this life we had built together. It was real and strong and worth fighting for. I had almost lost it by letting fear control me, but I had been given a chance to choose differently, to trust in what we had created together, and I was never going to take that for granted again. The rest of the evening passed in a joyful blur. We danced with our friends and ate incredible food and watched the video montage that Caspian had created, which made everyone in the room cry. We cut a cake and made toasts and thanked everyone for being part of our lives. Vivian pulled me aside at one point and hugged me tightly, telling me how grateful she was that Caspian had found me, how happy I made her son. My father approached awkwardly and told me the party was beautiful and he was proud of what I had built with Caspian, which was probably the nicest thing he had said to me in years. Friends shared stories and memories, reminding us of moments we had forgotten, of inside jokes and shared experiences that had shaped who we were. As the party wound down and guests started to leave, Caspian and I found ourselves alone on the terrace overlooking the gardens. The moon was nearly full, casting silver light across everything, and somewhere in the distance an owl was calling. The air was cool and crisp, smelling of autumn leaves and approaching winter. "Thank you," I said again, leaning back against him as he wrapped his arms around me from behind. "For all of this, for loving me enough to do something this extraordinary. For being patient with my fears. For choosing me every day." He rested his chin on top of my head, and I could feel him smile. "You never have to thank me for loving you," he said softly. "Loving you is the easiest thing I have ever done. It is the most natural thing in the world. You are my person, Thessaly. You always have been. You always will be. We stood there for a long time, just holding each other under the stars, and I thought about marriage. About how it is not just the big romantic gestures, though those matter. It is also the small daily choices. The decision to trust even when fear whispers that you should not. The decision to communicate even when it is uncomfortable. The decision to keep showing up, keep trying, keep choosing each other through all the mess and difficulty of life. It is about building something together that is stronger than either person alone, something that can weather storms and survive doubts and grow deeper with time. We drove home that night, with the painting carefully secured in the back seat and my new bracelet on my wrist, the charms catching the streetlights as we passed. When we got home, we carried the painting inside together and spent an hour trying to decide where to hang it before settling on the wall across from our bed, so it would be the first thing we saw when we woke up every morning. A reminder of us, of what we meant to each other, of what we had built and were still building. As we got ready for bed, Caspian said something that stayed with me. I was thinking, he said, while I was planning all this, about how somewhere along the way, we had started to drift a little bit. Not in any dramatic way, but in all those small ways that relationships do when life gets busy. We stopped having those long meandering conversations we used to have. We stopped going on adventures together. We let work and obligations and routine overshadow the magic that brought us together in the first place. And I do not ever want that to happen again. I want us to be intentional about our love. I want us to keep dating each other, keep surprising each other, keep making time for what matters most. I pulled him close, resting my head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. I want that too, I said. And I want us to promise something else. I want us to promise that we will always be honest with each other, even when it is hard. If I start feeling insecure or scared, I will tell you instead of letting it spiral into suspicion. If you are stressed or distant, you will share that with me instead of withdrawing. We will choose communication over assumption, trust over fear, every single time. We made those promises to each other that night, sealed with kisses and whispered words and the comfortable silence of two people who understood each other completely. And I wish I could say that everything was perfect after that we never struggled or fought or faced hard times. But that would not be true, and it would not be honest. Life is complicated and messy. There were more challenges ahead of us. Times when money was tight, and we had to make difficult choices. Times when work stress bled into home life, and we snapped at each other over stupid things. Times when we disagreed about major decisions, like whether to buy a house or keep renting, whether to start trying for children or wait a few more years. Times when my old insecurities would rear up and I would have to actively choose trust over fear. Times when Caspian would get overwhelmed and withdraw into himself, and I would have to draw him back out with patience and love. But we kept our promises. We stayed intentional about our relationship. We made time for date nights even when we were busy. We had the hard conversations even when they were uncomfortable. We went to therapy, both individually and as a couple, to work through our respective damage and learn better ways of communicating and supporting each other. We kept choosing each other, actively and deliberately, every single day. For our 8th anniversary, we took a road trip up the coast, just the two of us. Staying in tiny bed and breakfasts and eating fresh seafood and talking for hours about everything and nothing. For our 9th anniversary, we volunteered together at a homeless shelter, spending the day serving meals and remembering how lucky we were to have each other and wanting to give something back to our community. For our 10th anniversary, we renewed our vows in a small ceremony on the Burnside Bridge, the same bridge where Caspian had proposed in the rain a decade earlier. We invited just his family and a few close friends, and I wore the bracelet he had given me at the surprise party, now with additional charms we had added over the years. A house for when we finally bought our home. A stethoscope for when I had to have emergency surgery and he stayed by my side through all of it. A mountain for the hiking trip where we spread his mother's ashes after she passed away suddenly from a heart attack. A book for the novel I illustrated that became a bestseller. a toolkit for when Caspian changed careers and started his own consulting business. Each charm, a marker of our journey, our growth, our continued choice to build this life together. Now, as I write this story, we are approaching our 15th anniversary. Caspian has that same secretive energy he had all those years ago, that same distracted look when he thinks I am not watching. I suspect he is planning something big again, but this time, I am not scared. This time, I do not wonder if there is another woman, or if our marriage is in trouble. This time, I trust because I know with absolute certainty that whatever he is planning comes from a place of love, because I know that even if things get hard, even if we face challenges I cannot currently imagine, we will face them together. Because I have seen what we can build when we choose each other consistently. When we prioritize our relationship. When we refuse to let fear or complacency or outside pressures damage what we have created. That 7th anniversary, that week of fear and doubt and eventual revelation, was a turning point for us. It was the moment we stopped taking each other for granted and started being truly intentional about our marriage. It was the moment we learned that love is not a passive state but an active choice, something you do rather than something you have. It was the moment we decided to tend our relationship like a garden, pulling weeds before they could take root, watering the flowers of affection and respect and partnership. And that has made all the difference. I look at the painting on our bedroom wall every morning. Those intertwined blue and silver figures, and I am reminded of who we are. Of what we have built. Of why we choose each other. I look at the bracelet on my wrist, heavy with charms representing our journey. And I am grateful for every single moment, the good and the bad, the easy and the hard, because all of it has brought us here. To this life, to this love, to this partnership that continues to grow and deepen with each passing year. So to anyone who is listening to this story, anyone who has ever felt that cold dread in their stomach, that certainty that something is wrong, that conviction that they are about to lose everything, I want to say this. Talk to your partner. Have the hard conversations. Do not let fear make decisions for you. Do not let the voices from your past poison your present. And remember that sometimes, the thing that feels like an ending is actually a new beginning. Sometimes, the secret your partner is keeping is not a betrayal but a gift. Sometimes, the distance you are feeling is not them pulling away but them working hard to pull you closer. Sometimes, you just need to choose trust over fear. Communication over assumption, love over doubt. Because marriage is not about never having problems. It is not about finding someone perfect or being perfect yourself. It is about finding someone worth fighting for and then doing the work. Every single day, to build something beautiful together. It is about being intentional and honest and vulnerable, even when it is scary. It is about forgiving each other's failures and celebrating each other's successes and showing up for all the ordinary moments in between. It is about choosing each other, again and again, in the big moments and the small ones, when it is easy and when it is hard, when you feel like it and when you do not. Caspian just walked into my studio as I am writing this. He is looking at me with that expression, the one that still makes my heart skip after 15 years. And he is asking what I am working on. I am writing about that 7th anniversary, I tell him. About the surprise party and how scared I was beforehand. About how far we have come since then. He comes over and reads over my shoulder for a moment, his hand resting warm and familiar on my back. Then he kisses the top of my head and smiles. We have come a long way, he agrees. But we still have so far to go, and I cannot wait to go there with you. I save my work and stand up, taking his hand. Want to go for a walk? I ask. The moon is almost full. Always, he says. I will always choose you. And we walk out into the evening together, hand in hand, the way we have walked through everything for the past 15 years. Together, choosing each other, building a love that is not perfect but real, not easy but worth it. Not guaranteed, but fought for with everything we have. That is our story. That is our love. And I would not change a single moment of it. Not the fear or the doubt or the struggles. Because all of it has made us who we are. All of it has brought us here, to this moment, to this life, to this love that continues to grow deeper and stronger with each passing year. So, wherever you are watching this from, thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for letting me share this piece of my heart with you. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of your own relationship, or gave you hope for the kind of love you want to build, please let me know in the comments where you are watching from. Tell me your story. Tell me about the moment you almost lost everything and chose to fight for it instead. Tell me about the fears you have overcome and the love you have built. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories about real love and real struggle and real commitment, stories that remind us that we are all doing our best to figure out this complicated, beautiful thing called life, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Because these stories matter. Your story matters. And we are all in this together, learning how to love and be loved, how to trust and be trustworthy, how to build something lasting in a world that often feels temporary. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, always choose love.